And now we get to the grand scale of things because the WWE has a ton of pay-per-views throughout the year. Some are awesome, some are great, including the ones from NXT. Others, they make you want to cry and weep. But we gladly discarded those here because we're about to have a positive conversation, not about the biggest disappointments, but about the best pay-per-view of 2016. This is going to be quite the lengthy conversation because a lot of key factors can play into this, and NXT is included in more than one of the different nominees. So, Keith, could you read us the pay-per-view nominees?
Our current list is as follows. NXT Takeover Dallas, NXT Takeover Toronto, SummerSlam, No Mercy, the Royal Rumble, Battleground, WrestleMania, WWE TLC, and Survivor Series.
There's a lot of good content right here. This is going to be a little bit difficult.
So I'm going to start it off. I'm going to start this show with a showstopper. We should cut WrestleMania.
Honestly, I was going to suggest the same thing. So I am completely okay with cutting WrestleMania.
Yeah, it's like we mentioned in the biggest disappointment, how Dean Ambrose versus Brock Lesnar kind of just, you lost all the momentum in the world for that show because of that match. And then it just, remember how we all felt by the time Triple H versus Roman Reigns happened, and we just all like, can I go to bed now, please?
Yeah, we wanted that thing to end.
You run down this card right away. The Intercontinental title match, the ladder match was fine. Jericho versus Styles, that was a disappointment to me. League of Nations versus New Day, Lesnar versus Ambrose, we've already gotten far too much into that. Charlotte defeating Becky Lynch and Sasha was the best match of the night. The Undertaker Shane Hell in a Cell was, aside from a couple key spots, was really not an actual great match.
Zack Ryder, he went places after that show.
Yeah, Ryder had a lot of luck. Corbin wins the armbar. Rock defeats Eric Rowan. That might be the most historical thing of the night. And then everybody was done by the time Reigns and Triple H came on. So really, aside from the women's match and a couple of really cool moments, WrestleMania did not have a lot going for it.
As one of three people in this group right now that is going to next year's WrestleMania, this makes me sad. But I agree pretty much. So
yes.
Okay, we're cutting that off. Can we cut off perhaps the Royal Rumble? How are we feeling about the Rumble? So there we have Ambrose versus Owens, the last man standing. We have the New Day versus the Usos, Kalisto versus Alberto Del Rio. Talk about a 5-star match. Charlotte defeated Becky Lynch, and then Triple H won the Rumble by eliminating Dean Ambrose. Now that right there, you can sort of make a case of how that transitioned into WrestleMania, and we just talked about biggest disappointment with Dean Ambrose in the previous award. So that's why I'm kind of saying this, because there was some good stuff in here, but in the grand scheme, with all of the other different pay-per-views we have, I am willing to cut the Rumble.
Yeah, the Rumble had a couple of really cool moments, like AJ Styles' debut, but this is overall best show, and I don't think the Rumble belongs on that list.
Yeah, I agree. The Rumble match had a few cool moments. We had the title change, Triple H becoming champion, but other than that, there's nothing amazingly memorable about this show, aside from, of course, AJ, as Keith mentioned.
What's another show we could possibly cut? I'm looking here. We have Survivor Series as a recent show where we had Goldberg versus Lesnar.
No Mercy. No Mercy should go. Started off strong, but kind of like WrestleMania, where it started off really strong, and by the time we got to the main event of Bray Wyatt versus Randy Orton, it was all but fizzled out.
Plus, really that also had the situation. That was also the show where Becky Lynch couldn't wrestle, right? Yeah, so then Naomi came out and wrestled, but then she beat Alexa Bliss, which was very confusing considering they were building up Alexa.
Yeah, I can't imagine this in my top 3, so willing to cut this as well.
All right. Consider
we got 3 shows cut. Right now, we still have NXT TakeOver Dallas, NXT TakeOver Toronto. We got SummerSlam. We got Battleground, TLC, and Survivor Series. What do we cut from that?
What about Battleground?
Let's look at Battleground. Everybody listening, the card was the tag team match of Sasha and Bayley versus Charlotte and Dana Brooke. The Wyatt family defeated the New Day. Rusev defeated Zack Ryder in an awesome match. Sami Zayn defeated Kevin Owens. Now, Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens.
Awesome match.
Yes,
poor
that
Ryder.
was a fantastic match.
Now, Zayn and Owens, they stole the show. Was that the one where Zayn almost died with the moonsault spot? I forget. It was in one of their matches, but I can't remember if it was Battleground. I'm thinking it was.
I believe you're right.
But that was a good match. So we have Natty versus Becky Lynch. The Miz versus Darren Young. Okay, yeah. Right now, I'm actually putting this because we had a match between Darren Young and The Miz. We've barely seen Darren Young since.
Hey, remember when we all thought Darren Young was going to win that match and go on to do something great?
And nothing happened.
So yeah, it had the Shield triple threat in there. You had Cena, Enzo, and Cass defeat the Club. Yeah, I'm willing to cut this.
Yeah, it was an event with a couple of cool moments. Like you had the Bayley debut at the beginning of the show. Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens tore the house down. But you had the Shield triple threat, and you had this weird stopgap in the AJ Styles John Cena storyline where it turned into that 6-man tag. I just don't think it hangs and should get cut.
So just to recap, we now have TLC. We have Survivor Series. Yeah, Battleground is officially gone, removed from this list. Oh man, now it is getting tough. Between the NXTs, I would get rid of TakeOver Dallas, and I would keep Toronto.
I don't know. I kind of feel like both takeovers need to stay. But I would also, if we had to choose between the two takeovers, I would take NXT Takeover Dallas over NXT
let's put a red
Takeover
flag.
Toronto.
What, you mean to keep Dallas and remove Toronto?
Yes.
What? Okay, I am willing to draw the gun. I don't have a gun with me right now. But Toronto, every match told a story. Every match was awesome. Even Rude versus Dillinger, right? Like, it wasn't a 5-star match. We talked about it in our review. It wasn't meant to be. It was a match where they told a story. Ty Dillinger finally got that one-on-one match that even though he lost, he won in front of the audience. We got the Authors of Pain and TM61. That match, yeah, that wasn't too much special. But then the DIY versus Revival, multiple falls match was one of my favorite matches of the year. Johnny Gargano.
But you could say the
is
same
amazing.
thing about the American Alpha versus the Revival from
Yeah,
Dallas. Like
that's the thing.
There's very comparable. If you break it down match by match, like Dallas, you had Baron Corbin versus Austin Aries, right? Not that special. Whatever.
Not at all.
But then you had Shinsuke Nakamura versus Sami Zayn, which was, I would argue, is one of the most special matches of the year. You had American Alpha versus the Revival, which I would say is very comparable to the 2 out of 3 falls with DIY, and a great match on its own. You had Samoa Joe versus Finn Balor, in the main event, and that match had some unfortunate happenings in it, but I would still say it's a decent match.
It was all right.
And then the Divas matches, like at Dallas, there
Women.
was
Women.
My bad.
Women.
Yeah, red flag. Shit. So you had
Triggered.
Yeah. You had Asuka versus Bayley at Dallas, and Asuka versus Mickie James at Toronto. They were kind of the same match, really.
Well, was that when Asuka first won the title? That was kind of like the shock win over Bayley?
Yeah, and the crowd was definitely very mild. Regardless of that, I remember that match did not have a lot of energy. I felt like that match was missing something.
Well, I'll put it this way. I would take Dallas over Toronto as well. I don't know. American Alpha versus Revival was amazing. I love their chemistry. And Nakamura versus Sami Zayn. Those are the two matches that I just absolutely loved from this show that I think I enjoyed more than any of the other matches from Toronto. Even though the 2 out of 3 falls tag match was insanely good. it's just those two matches from Dallas really put it over the top for me and why I appreciate it over Toronto.
And all that being said, I don't think we cut it. I don't think we cut either.
Yeah, I actually like that we had this because we can make a strong argument for both. So then my follow-up here, and sorry to cut you off, Keith, is that do we move maybe to Survivor Series or SummerSlam? Those are the only two other shows I can see that we can maybe contemplate cutting.
Of the two, I would say we should cut SummerSlam because it's another one of those shows very similar to the ones that we have cut earlier where they're just like one or two great matches.
Yeah.
But everything else felt like it dragged on a little bit. And the difference between Survivor Series and SummerSlam for me is that Survivor Series didn't feel like it was a 4-hour show. It was one of those longer shows with the pre-show and all of that, where SummerSlam absolutely did, where even though one of my personal favorite matches of the year was AJ Styles versus John Cena, by the time we got to Brock Lesnar versus Randy Orton, I was just done. And I will admit Survivor Series ended early, and it ended with a big shock, but I didn't feel that with Survivor Series, and I consider
it got people talking.
And it got people talking. So I would much rather cut SummerSlam of those two. And
Yeah,
I think TLC stays as well.
I would cut SummerSlam. Obviously we had Styles versus Cena as one of the best matches, but then you had things like Miz defeating Apollo Crews. That was kind of And Ambrose versus Ziggler, I actually remember being a pretty big disappointment on SummerSlam. So that really wasn't anything to write home about. Lesnar and Orton had potential, but just ended up being way too short to really be super, super memorable.
And remember when they debuted that Universal title? Boy, was that fun.
Man.
So SummerSlam, far from a bad show, but I would not put it on the top 3.
So with that, we have 4 shows left to recap. NXT TakeOver Dallas and Toronto. And then we have Survivor Series and most recently TLC, which we're very glad. Keith, this is going to sound weird.
So hard.
We're kind of thankful that you got sick for the week that we were originally going to record this.
Yes.
Because otherwise, this would not even have been part of it. We would already have 3. Now it's harder.
Yeah, if anything, I just made it much more difficult on ourselves.
This is where we got to choose our favorite child. Yeah. This is the first award, I would say, up to this point where it's hard to both have to cut one and then ultimately have to sort of create an order, right?
Yeah. This hurts to suggest. But how about we cut NXT TakeOver Toronto?
Oh my God.
I don't feel
I don't know
good
if we're
about
ever going to win this battle.
I don't feel good about this, but
can I throw something right now just to feel better? There, I threw a plastic bag.
All right. But Survivor Series and TLC were just such strong shows, and it's like we talked about earlier with NXT Takeover, the 2 NXT Takeovers, where they're very comparable, and I think that Dallas was superior to Toronto in that way. So I don't know if we really need to have 2 of the same show. I could see the argument where that same show twice was better than the other 2 on our list, but I don't think that's the case because Survivor Series was great. I will fight for Survivor Series, and TLC was awesome as well.
Yeah, I mean, looking at this, I kind of have to agree with Keith that those 2 shows kind of serve the same purpose, where you got a lot of kind of different things from TLC and Survivor Series. I mean, Survivor Series had a lot of great team matches, as well as just the super shocking ending of Goldberg and Lesnar, just, for better or for worse, got a huge buzz going. TLC was really structured very well. The only disappointment on there really was Nikki Bella versus Carmella. But I mean, you opened up with a quick, strong tag match. Miz versus Dolph Ziggler was great. Corbin versus Kalisto was a nice surprise. Alexa Bliss versus Becky Lynch had a shocking ending to it. and then AJ Styles and Dean Ambrose tear the house down. I mean, if you're to build a TLC pay-per-view from the ground up, it looked just like TLC this year.
They definitely tore the house down, those two.
Fine, okay? I get your points. They're solid. Now I'm going to go cry in a corner, but I've officially removed TakeOver Toronto. And now we get to the meat and potatoes of this. Our top three in no order right now. This is going
to be so hard.
Yeah, man. Our top three right now in no order is NXT Takeover Dallas. We have Survivor Series. And then we have TLC.
Let me propose an order.
Yeah, go for it.
At number 3, we have TLC. At number 2, we have Survivor Series. And at number 1, we have NXT TakeOver Dallas. How do we feel about that?
The only thing really that I would probably put Survivor Series as number 1 over this is simply the buzz factor. I don't think the other pay-per-views have that same factor as much as Survivor Series has it. So I would probably order it Survivor Series at 1, Dallas at 2, and then TLC at 3.
Okay. Yeah, I can get behind that. And plus the men's Survivor Series match, as I've said on the podcast many times, is one of my favorite matches of the year. So that definitely gets a couple points for me. And yeah, you know what? I can get behind that, Ryan.
I'm gonna have to agree because the whole purpose of the brand split, yeah, it really wasn't. Thanks a lot to your point there, Ryan. And something that I want to add to it is that the whole point of the brand split was to create legitimacy for SmackDown to finally become not the B show, but the one show. So you have A and you have one, right? Like parallels or something. And this was the show that proved they can do that. Because when you looked at every match, I didn't care which team won, but the fact that I cared about the teams battling each other made me realize, okay, we've had a lot of kick-ass shows this year. Takeovers, you can talk about the finale for the Cruiserweight Classic, but that's the finale, right? So it's part of a structure, so it's not its own show. If it comes to matches only, we can talk about a bunch of shows. But if you want to talk about the storyline, the reason a lot of people watch wrestling in the mainstream, like not talking about smaller scale, I think that does it. TLC, though, then showed, okay, you can have an awesome one-brand pay-per-view and have it work. And then you have TakeOver Dallas, which was like the transitional period of, okay, Samoa Joe is the new number 1 face. Here we go, American Alpha. This was just before they moved over to SmackDown. Nakamura and Zayn. This was Sami Zayn's farewell. Now, I don't think Asuka versus Bayley was that great of a match, but it showed that, yeah, NXT is changing, but it can still be good. So
yeah,
and
honestly,
agree.
Like if just looking at like TLC versus Survivor Series, match for match, TLC may be a better show, but an overall experience, I think, has to go to Survivor Series. The storyline going in, the team versus team, the shockingness of Brock Lesnar versus Goldberg, plus just an insane men's Survivor Series match is what makes it the best show of the year.
So here we go, folks. I think we got ourselves a list. So best pay-per-view for Byte That Awards 2016 is as follows. At number 3, we got the SmackDown TLC. At number 2, we have NXT TakeOver Dallas. And at number 1, we have we got to do more brop-a-doos in this thing. Can I get a brop-a-doo in here? We got Survivor Series for being a kick-ass show with a battle between Raw and SmackDown. Now that we finally decided which was the pay-per-view of the year, up next we have the headline of the year, so just click on, watch the next video, and enjoy the rest of the 2016 Byte That Awards special.